Mario has been a household name for years and a franchise that's always up near the top when you think about platforming. And the Switch is no different. While we thought Mario Maker 2 and U Deluxe were all we were going to get, we have a new side-scrolling game with new features and redirection in how some of the progress is done. So let's dive right in. Here is my review of Super Mario Bros. Wonder for the Nintendo Switch. The story here is pretty simple, as all Mario platformers are. The crew are visiting the Flower Kingdom and Bowser shows up to ruin the party, taking the magical Wonder Flower that can warp reality, turning himself into a giant sentient castle. Mario and friends then team up with the Prince of the Kingdom and set out to collect Wonder Seed in order to reach and reverse what Bowser's done. And that's pretty much it. Mario platforms don't need a lot of story, but it was a neat little plot, plus it's a little fresh to have Bowser come and not kidnap someone for once. When it comes to gameplay, Wonder is a side-scrolling platform with some customization and co-op thrown in. As you play, you'll select stages and traverse side-scrolling environments as several different possible Mario characters. Now this game has some of the old and some of the new thrown in. You have a familiar overworld of finding stages and playing them, traversing each world as you go across the game, sometimes in Mario 3 fashion on straight lines, and other times in more open areas. And we have just a bit of collectathon stuff going on, with a lot of blocked areas on the map that you need to collect Wonder Seeds for from the stages. Each level has 2 possible Wonder Seeds to find, so you can technically complete every world without playing all of its stages if you get enough of those optional seeds. Now you can go through the levels as several different playable characters. The game claims you have 12 different characters to choose from, but let's be honest, 4 different colored Yoshis are still just Yoshi. Though it is interesting and a little different for Nintendo to allow Yoshi to be playable in a main series platformer, instead of regulating them to the world-esque power-up role. But we should talk about how these characters play. Most of them feel more like skins than actual characters. It is true that Yoshi and Nabbit play a little bit different, being the designated easy mode characters with Yoshi's iconic flutter jump and tongue attack, but all the others play exactly the same. No dress hover, no lighter weight, no Peachette. Now there is a way to fix this that we'll get into just a moment, but first let's talk about how the stages work. You have your typical format of side-scrolling around, gaining power-ups and taking down enemies with the goal of reaching the flagpole to end the stage. But this game adds a lot more moving pieces and things going on. We have 3 new power-ups in the form of the Elephant Form, Bubble Flower, and Drill Cap, but also the Wonder Seed reality warping element. As you're trying to find hidden Wonder Seeds, you will occasionally run into a magical wonder item that will transform the stage. While you won't always see the insanity of moving pipes and everything from the opening area, it'll often have a ton of things change in interesting ways, requiring you to navigate the warping environment to find the Wonder Seed. Progress is also mixed up and a little bit different. Not all worlds have castles or even boss fights. Sometimes you'll just be going through a platforming stage and boom, you see NPCs you saved from a cave-in and get your reward without having to tackle a boss. Which is probably good considering there are only 3 bosses in this game, with Bowser Jr. and the airship conveyor belt you fight a few times apiece, then the final boss. You fight them just enough to have it not feel repetitive. Now let's talk about 2 great new features with multiplayer and badges. Multiplayer co-op isn't new to this game, but they added a new feature that lets you go online and you traverse stages with other players in a sort of ghost state. You aren't sharing a game session with them, but you're all connected as you play the game in single player. This adds the element of co-op where players that die will turn into ghosts that other players can walk into to revive. I found this to be an extremely interesting way to do multiplayer without always having to be friends with them and making separate sessions. And I often found myself wanting to slow down while playing the stages and just stick with the ghosts as a group to help them with a revive if needed. And then we get to badges, which you can unlock and equip as you play the game, giving you extra little platforming abilities or buffs like being able to survive pitfalls. But I like to call the badges how you restore the characters to the way they played in previous games. Many of the badges give you abilities just like what used to be character specific. For example, the parachute cap feels very similar to Peach's hover from previous entries, and you can unlock and give Luigi back his mid-air run with a badge. Though you can't fix everything. One thing I'm really not crazy about is how they manage the quote-unquote easy mode characters. Yoshi and Nabbit cannot use any of the new power-ups but have abilities like the flutter jump. The problem is that they are literally invincible to all damage outside of instant death pits. Nabbit being like this is fine, as he had the ability to just bypass enemies in U Deluxe as well, but to give Yoshi the same ability just seems weird. Perhaps it's just because Yoshi is always my preferred character in Mario games, but I wish they hadn't been made literally invincible to all damage from enemies and bosses, and only able to die through instant death scenarios. Now, speaking of the difficulty, I find it to be pretty okay in this game. I wouldn't call this a hard platformer, but it's not so easy that I never had to replay or retry stages. A bit less difficult than your average Mario platformer. And then we get to content and length. Oddly enough, there are only 7 main worlds in this game rather than the usual 8, with this game's 8th world being a completely optional collection of very difficult stages, something you probably want to save the post-game for. But even with fewer overall worlds, it still took me a good 10 hours to go from starting the game to beating the final boss. After that, you can tackle the bonus world and pretty much just collect everything that you didn't do before. Next up is presentation, which is where this game really shines. Literally. Mario games all look good, but this one looks absolutely beautiful. Everything is colorful and all of the models are smoothed out without jaggies, along with the fact that everything is just so animated and pretty looking. From all the little actions and animations, even when you're entering a warp pipe, to how emotional all of the enemies look when you engage with them. It plays great too at an almost perfect 60 FPS from start to finish, with extremely short load times and no drops in performance even when you're online and going through with other players' ghosts. And then we get to battery life. Super Mario Bros. Wonder gives the original and light models a range of 2 to 3 hours, while the V2 and OLED give it a battery range of 5.5 to 6 hours. In conclusion, Mario Wonder brings more side-scrolling fun to the Switch with very interesting co-op features that let you help other players without actually playing with them. Now on the downside, I wasn't a fan of them relegating Yoshi to a God Mode easy character like Nabbit, but that's a more personal and small nitpick for an otherwise gorgeous and fun platformer for all ages. Reviews to go rates Super Mario Bros. Wonder for the Nintendo Switch a 9.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.